What do you think was the coolest trip you took as a single dude, as a bachelor? And now let me explain why I asked that question.
Okay.
If I ask you what's the coolest trip you took in general, I know
Yeah.
you're going to say something that you did with mom.
Right.
Same with me, right?
Yeah.
The trips that I take with my wife have been the
best.
most fun and the coolest, right?
Sure.
So to make it a little bit more specific, what's the coolest trip you took in your single life as a bachelor before honeymoon, before any of that kind of stuff?
So I'll give you
In our last episode, you mentioned going to Hawaii, going to Chicago, but
Yeah.
give us a little more detail on some of those cool trips.
So probably my favorite ever trip as a bachelor was when Gary and I were little. This is a Gary Phillips story.
Yeah, Gary, your best buddy
My
from
best buddy Gary Phillips. If you picture Fabio, look Fabio up. Skinny Fabio.
Skinny Fabio.
Good looking dude, Gary.
Super handsome.
Long, really flowing long hair. So when Gary and I were little, and I don't even know if
And
my
you were
mom
little
knows
in
this.
this in what years
So
are we
this
talking
is probably
about?
19. I was maybe 14 when we started doing this.
Okay.
So it was probably 1980.
Okay.
So Gary and I realized Gary had taken a bus trip with his mom somewhere
Okay. Like a Greyhound?
on Greyhound,
Okay.
and he came back and he said,
Were
"Kyle."
were Greyhounds as ghetto as they were back then as they are now?
Pretty much, yeah. It's
Okay.
always been pretty ghetto.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because nowadays, if you're taking a Greyhound,
Yeah.
things ain't working out too good for
Yeah.
you.
Well, yeah. That was what people from our neighborhood did. You didn't fly anywhere.
Sure.
You took the Greyhound,
Yeah.
right? So one summer, Gary and I had this great idea. Gary took a trip with his mom on Greyhound. He got back, and he said, "Kyle, did you know, you and I, if we come up with like $25 each, we can take a bus from here to Galveston Beach in Texas." Galveston Island was about it's probably 250 miles away,
Yeah.
right? And I said, "Well, so
Because Dallas and this is actually just as much for me as anybody else because I moved up from Texas when I was 11, so I still am a little unfamiliar with the geography, right?
Yeah.
Dallas falls a little bit more central in Texas.
yeah, it's kind of northeast.
East.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's up near the top.
Okay.
Northeast,
And
northeast.
so we're talking Galveston. We're talking
Gulf
down
Coast.
to the south,
Yeah.
Gulf Coast, right?
Through Houston, all the way down.
Past Houston,
Past Houston, yeah.
down to the beach.
Yeah,
Okay.
so he says if we can come up with $25 a piece,
Now, is Galveston around the corner from where your dad grew up?
it's not far. My dad
Okay.
grew up in Beaumont, my
Beaumont.
mom in Port Arthur.
Port Arthur. Okay.
Yeah, all right there in the same general area. Gulf Coast, all within probably, 60, 70 miles of each other right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Port Arthur a little bit farther up near Louisiana? Because doesn't
Yeah,
Grandma
'cause
have some?
Yeah, you're starting to move into the bayous and all that.
Okay.
when you
Okay.
get to Port
Of course,
Arthur.
Port Arthur sounds kind of Louisiana.
It is
if you're gonna
Louisiana-ish.
ish.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Beaumont, if you think about it, is Beaumont.
Oh yeah, Beaumont. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in Texas, we
On my
call it-
way, you make it.
yeah, we call it Beaumont.
Beaumont. Yeah.
So anyway, and I said, well, so what? I mean, it's not like you and me are going to get to go down to Galveston. And he says, well, if we set this up right, so Gary,
Oh shoot!
If we
The
talk-
scheme is hatching.
yes, if I tell
So
my mom,
$25 a piece, we can get down to Galveston.
yeah, that's step
here's,
one.
Here's how we're gonna do it.
Step two, you come over and spend the night with me a couple nights in a row. Which I'd spent the night with him before.
Yeah.
Gary's great. My parents knew him.
Yeah.
They loved him.
Yeah.
He's his son. He said, and then I'll go to your house and spend the nights, a couple nights in a row. So we'll call it 3 days, And I'm like, oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is if we set it up maybe 2 or 3 times during the summer, early in the summer, we spend the night for 3 days at each other's house.
Yeah.
Just checking with our parents.
Yeah. If we do
You
that
know,
in June, in August,
we could hop on a Greyhound, head down to Galveston.
say, hey, I'm heading to Kyle's for a couple
3
nights.
days, yes.
And hey, I'm
heading to
Gary's
Gary's
for
a
3
couple
days.
nights.
Oh,
you
no.
just pegged it.
Oh no.
Now you're talking about 14-year-old boys, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, at 14 in Oak Cliff, you can handle yourself.
streetwise
You-
enough.
You figured out a few
Sure,
things.
sure.
Yeah. So I'm like,
You've gotten beat up a handful of times, and you've run away from just as many beatings.
just as many beatings.
Yeah.
I run away from a lot more beatings than I took.
Sure. Okay.
But sometimes they catch you. But quick side note: people don't usually chase you down to beat you up. So if you know you're not in a good situation, run.
Yeah.
Don't fight. Run.
They'll chase you off, but they won't chase
They
you
won't
down.
chase you down. Yeah. Yeah. Learn to run fast and
Yeah. Serpentine.
What a great word. Yeah, so we start planning this thing, and I think he spent the night at my house a couple times for 3 days. I did it at his house, and then the day came, right, and we just showed up at the bus station downtown, which was only like
With a $25 bill each.
and a pup tent.
Just kidding.
Yeah,
And a pup
a
tent.
pup tent because we
Yeah,
found
because
out.
you guys weren't going to get no hotel
No,
down
we
there.
found out there's not far from where the bus goes through Houston, and it goes down and it stops on Galveston. There's a seawall on Galveston.
Like a dam?
No, it's like so they put up a big giant wall, and the bus stops like you get out and you're on the beach. It's
Okay.
the last stop is right there on the beach. You don't even have to walk.
Is it like
From the
that?
bus
Is it
stop.
like that kind of brick wall they put up?
Yeah, you
So
just-
it's beach all the way to this brick wall.
There you go.
And then you would take some stairs up it, and then that's when the street starts.
Right.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so Galveston has these big seawalls in a lot of areas.
I remember we went there when I was a
Yeah.
kid.
But
Okay.
just down from that, there's a state park on the beach, and they'll let you put up pup tents and sleep on the beach.
Oh.
So me and Gary we had $10 each in our hands, and we got our tickets, and we took $10 each because $10 will last us a couple days back then.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so we hop on the bus and we head down to Galveston, and we're there, and it takes 8 or 9 hours because you stop at
You
every
stop
little
it.
town.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're on the beach.
Did you guys encounter any cuckoos on the bus?
Well, that's when we realized when you drive back, the bus stops in a little town called, crazy enough, Kyle, Texas.
Kyle, Texas.
And in Kyle, Texas, at the time, and I recently looked it up and it's still there, is a major state prison.
Okay.
Now, back when we were doing this in 1980, it was a state prison and nothing.
Yeah.
And so there were signs along the road that said, don't pick
Yeah.
up hitchhikers, all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So when we're coming back the first
why
time.
do I feel like in The Longest Yard they drove Adam Sandler, Paul Crew out to Kyle, Texas?
That-
Why do I
in the
why do-
80s, yeah.
Why do I feel like
It has that feel to me.
whether
too.
whether you know Paul Crew as Burt Reynolds or as Adam Sandler?
Right.
Why do I feel like they drove him out to Kyle,
because
Texas?
it had the area around there kind of had that deserty.
It's a desert all the way around.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
And so when we're driving back, we go out there. We had a blast. We met all kinds of cute girls on the beach. We had a great time. Slept in our pup tents.
And Gary was the handsomest dude on the beach.
Handsomest dude on the beach.
So he was just
Yeah.
attracting all the ladies.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And we learned to body surf. There's not a lot of surfing there.
The waves aren't big enough.
Yeah, but you can body surf a little bit. When you're on the beach at 14, man, it's
The world is yours. Yeah.
And there was all kinds of restaurants and stuff. And I say restaurants, I mean McDonald's and pizza place.
Yeah, and like street vendors or whatever, right?
Yeah, so
getting
we didn't have
tacos
any
and
problems
stuff.
getting food. And we slept on the beach for 2 nights, and then the third day we hopped on the bus and came back. And as we were coming back, we stopped in Kyle, and some just released prisoners got on the bus.
Ooh.
And
Like the
there was
dudes
like 4 of them.
And
Like,
let's set the stage here because there are prisoners
yeah, and they're state.
and then there are state
Penitentiary.
prisoners and then there are state prisoners that don't have any family to come pick them up.
They don't. And they get
Yeah,
on the
no-
bus,
yeah.
and they had either Houston or Dallas.
Okay.
Because Houston's one way, Dallas is the other.
Uh-huh. And so you had all the dudes going back to Dallas.
Yeah. And Dallas, it probably same either way, the same kind of cities.
Yeah.
And I remember they got on the bus and they started causing a little bit of a ruckus. Like just,
Like amongst each other or with
no,
other
just
people on the
kinda
bus?
talking crappy to people and that's my seat, get up. And people were getting up for him and me and
Yeah.
Gary were thinking, oh, great.
Don't come talk to us. Just leave us alone.
And we knew
hopefully.
they didn't have weapons, right? We were smart enough to realize you
Sure,
can't-
sure.
unless somebody's waiting with a weapon on the outside, we got a fighting chance here, But these guys have been to prison, so they probably could beat you to death.
Boy,
you know?
what the naivety.
I know we're as
Yeah.
a man, you think through these things.
By the way, I'm about to pronounce this, the naivete. I don't want to sound pretentious. I think
Right.
that's just actually how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
The naivete of two
14-year-old
14-year-olds.
boys.
We could take these ex-cons.
we didn't think we could take them, but we knew
Yeah.
they couldn't stab us or shoot us.
Sure.
So at least we had a chance to fight back because Gary and I had fought back a lot in our lives.
Yeah. But never with ex-cons.
Never with ex-cons. We didn't think that far ahead.
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And we fought against guys that looked like them,
Yeah.
but not ex-cons.
Yeah, not
right?
fresh out. Yeah.
Well, they ended up leaving us alone, but I remember for the first maybe hour after that driving, we were kind of shivering. It was scary.
Yeah.
And then we got back and we're like, but then when we got back, we started that was the most exciting part of our trip. Right?
Yeah,
It
that was
became,
better than the beach or anything, huh? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And we thought we're doing this crap
yeah,
again. So every summer after that,
yeah. You remember when Snake got on the bus and
yeah,
we, yeah. Snake
every summer
and
after that,
road dog.
Road Dog,
Yeah.
yeah, and Tailpipe.
Don't ask us how he got that
No, we
name
don't want to talk about
in the clink.
Tailpipe. Yeah. He's the one you don't want messing with
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Funny enough, nicest guy in the whole prison, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, everybody was his friend. That's right. But yeah,
Oh my
but after
gosh.
that, we did it every summer, and our parents never knew.
Woo! From 14 all the way till you
Yeah,
graduated.
until we graduated. And I remember we did it after, and we at one point got cars, and we still took the bus
Well, it was, I mean,
because it was.
this
just,
is also
it was our
back
deal.
back in the 80s where you couldn't count on your car to get from Dallas to Galveston.
Yeah, it would break. There's a lot of breaking.
So
down
paying
online.
25 for the Greyhound was a much better idea.
You were pretty much guaranteed to get there. We did have
Yeah.
a bus breakdown one time, but another bus came along and picked us up.
See, I've taken 2 or 3 Greyhounds, and one of the times I took it, our bus broke down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there was no bus to come get us. We just had to wait till
Just wait.
they got it fixed.
I think I remember you telling me about that.
It's because we broke down in Mountain Home, which is only like 45 minutes away.
Right.
And I remember calling you, be like, "Hey, we're broke down," and you said, "Well, do you want me to come get you?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know how long we're going to be here." And we kind of just left it up to whatever, and I ended up just waiting until
waiting
they,
on the bus.
which I mean, added 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, but the last time I took that trip with Gary was the same summer that I asked your mom to marry me.
Because you guys
it
got
was-
married in June of 1990,
Right. So this
right?
would have been 89. No, 90. We got in June of 91.
Okay.
So it would have been 1990,
Okay.
right? And so, yeah, so we did it almost 10 years, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every year we'd go to Galveston. And the tickets were never got really anything more than $25. I mean,
Yeah.
they were just always cheap.
Yeah.
But the really
What do you
cool
think a
part about it
Greyhound would
was-
cost you nowadays?
I don't know, probably $100 to get anywhere.
Oh, I bet you way more than that.
Well, here's what's cool. I didn't know the story, but I talked to Gary maybe a month ago.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to Gary, we were talking about our last trip we took. And I had met your mother and I was a fan.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this, but he said when we were riding back on the bus, he said, I'll never forget you told me this might be our last trip because I'm going to marry this girl.
Yeah.
And it shook me. I didn't
When he
remember
told
telling
you
him
that, yeah.
Yeah. But Gary is the kind of guy that will remember those little details like that are just so important and cool in your life.
Yeah, yeah,
you know?
yeah. And you were telling him, like, I love you, Gary. We're best friends, but I'm coming down Galveston with her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're not taking no Greyhound.
This might be the last trip. Yeah. Because because I'm going to marry this girl, you know? And when he told me that, it shook me because I didn't remember.
Yeah.
But it was interesting too because when we were down there, you know, we're 24 years old by now, right?
Yeah.
And we're both reasonably good-looking dudes, and you know, we've filled out physically, and I remember we were a target for some girls down there, and I was just different.
Like girls also vacationing, or do you wait?
No,
you
girls
don't-
vacationing.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I was about to say, you're not telling me that girls are trying to run trick on you or
No,
anything like
no, not on this trip.
Not on, yeah, okay. Okay,
no,
Cat.
no, I'm not. I'm being silly. No, but Gary said,
We came back and our pup tent was gone.
yeah. No, but it was interesting because I think a couple of the last times we did get a hotel right there on the beach, though.
Okay.
I think maybe I know for sure the last time we went. And I think maybe that's what triggered Gary to ask me about Shelly on the ride back because I wouldn't engage in some of the other goofiness with these girls that I would have in the
Oh, okay, yeah.
past. And so as we're riding
Yeah.
back, we're talking. You know,
He's
when
like,
you got
hey, why
9
didn't
hours,
you you weren't really chatting up the girls like
weren't
you
chatting
used
up
to.
the girls like you used to. And I'm like, I love this girl. I think I'm gonna make her my wife. I'm gonna marry her. Yeah. And so that was, I didn't realize.
And he told you that story just this last year,
just this last
30
year.
years later.
Yeah, 33 years later. Yeah, and I never knew, but it's interesting because I remember that last trip more than any of them, for a couple of different reasons, and I have pictures of that trip. You've seen some of those
I
pictures.
think I
of
have,
that
yeah.
Final trip we took.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, and it was probably because it was with Gary, and there's so many things connected to it.
Yeah.
But I also did go to Hawaii for 49 days.
Okay. Was that part of the bronze
part of the
cleaning?
bronze cleaning company. Yeah.
Okay.
And I stayed in the.
That's funny. We're like 7 or 6 episodes in, and we've talked about bronze cleaning like 6 times already.
You know what?
I never would have guessed
It
that
was, it's a
that,
big,
that
it
would
was a
be.
big. I had a lot of experiences with those guys, man.
Yeah.
'Cause
Well, they were flying you around. I mean,
not
that's
just that, but I
different.
sold for them and I did the physical part of it. But yeah, they sent me to Hawaii to refinish the bronze in the Weston Maui, which is on the beach called Kaanapali. It was underdeveloped at the time, maybe just a couple of hotels, and we would work from like 10 o'clock at night till like 5 a.m. in the morning, right? Because they didn't want us to really disrupt people's daily activities.
Sure, yeah.
Because we used a lot of lacquer thinners and
Yeah.
sprays. And,
Yeah. So lots of smells and noises
yeah.
and stuff. Yeah.
And I was with these guys who, they were fine fellas, you know.
Yeah.
Just weren't my cup of tea because I'd go to bed at 4 and I'd sleep till 10 a.m. and I would run to the beach with my flippers and snorkel. And there was a reef off the maybe a
Yeah.
quarter mile off the coast.
Those guys really were there for work. You're like,
They
if
were
I'm
there for-
if I'm going to be here, I'm going to go get everything out of it.
Yeah. And I got so good at snorkeling. And I would go every day by myself. And people would tell me, you shouldn't go by yourself. I'm like, dude, they won't go.
Yeah.
And I bought my own set of really nice
Flippers
flippers
and
and snorkel. And yeah, I just had a blast. Met all kinds of people, did all kinds of things, saw all kinds of wildlife. You know, I swam in an area I shouldn't have swam. And that was kind of a scary situation. But animal life is scarier than you think it. When you see it on TV, you're like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, look at that cool dolphin. I'm going to swim over and it's going to take me for a ride. But when you see it in real life, these
Yeah.
suckers are giant.
Yeah,
and they're
yeah,
coming
yeah.
at you at lightning speed. And you're like, this thing can kill me.
Yeah, and I ain't no Tarzan. So
I
I'm
ain't-
not.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not Jacques
communicating.
Cousteau.
Yeah, I ain't Dr. Doolittle in my way out of this one. Yeah, yeah.
Another-
I bet they're way bigger than you realize
they're
too.
giant. And you know, when you first see them, you move towards them. But then when you're like, oh, crap, I'm out here by myself. There's like 6 of them. If one of them doesn't, you know, care for me,
Yeah.
you know, because, I mean, in real life, there's people that are a little off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, and so, you know, you never know when you're going to come across a dolphin, you know, it's got a, you know, it's a little
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
And he's like, oh, look at that. Let me go hit it.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? I don't
Yeah.
know.
I'm trying to think of a way to describe it. Yeah, a crackhead dolphin.
Crackhead dolphin.
Yeah, or a wino dolphin,
a
right?
mental dolphin.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But, you know,
Yeah.
the other thing is I saw a couple different experiences I'll
Yeah.
never forget.
I should probably say
saw-
a white trash dolphin is what
There
you
you
should
go.
say. A
That's
white
probably
trash
better.
dolphin, right?
Yeah. He's
Yeah.
been treated unkindly by the other dolphins. And
Yep.
he's a little angry.
Yeah, he's territorial for no good reason.
Yes, there you go. That's him. That's him. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got a little scar under one of his eyes.
Yeah, it just drank a Monster Energy drink, and
He's on the
it's
rampage.
not afraid. Yeah.
Yeah, he told his mom when he left the house, hey, I'm
Yeah.
going to get into some
Yeah,
trouble
I
today.
see red. Right? one of those one of those dolphins.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but I saw some of those, but I also saw, at one point I saw a sea turtle,
Okay.
which there's not a lot of them in that area at that time. It was summertime. But I saw one swimming, and I'm like, now's my chance to be Jacques Cousteau. You know, I'm going to swim up to it, grab its shell, go for a little
Yeah.
ride.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're snorkeling, you can't go too deep because,
You got to be able to get back up.
yeah, your ears will pop and it.
Sure.
Yeah. But he was pretty shallow, so I swam over next to him, and I'm getting close, and I'm catching him. And I remember the sea turtle looked back at me like, boy, I will knock you.
Yeah.
Don't even try this
Yeah.
crap. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? I think I'm not going to try it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never heard of a sea turtle
Yeah.
biting somebody or flipping them to death. But, you know, I didn't want to be the first.
They'll beat the shell out of you if
Beat
you're
the
not.
shell, yeah, knock the shell out of me. Just immediately.
I
right?
know that's low hanging fruit,
Yeah.
but I also used to watch Ninja Turtles on Fox Box every Saturday,
And that.
and they said it
Yeah.
6 times an episode. So don't blame me.
Yeah, but one of the scariest events I did have though was I was swimming. I would swim up and down this coral reef, and at one point I guess I had my head under the water for too long, and I hadn't looked up in a while. Because usually I would just poke my head up to see where my beach was, to see if I needed to go back, you know, this way or that way. And I ended up just snorkeling for a while, and I came up and I didn't recognize anything. So my hotel could have been a mile that way or a mile that way. And it was underdeveloped, right? There was a lot of empty space. And so I'm thinking, I got a choice now, right? I knew the current was pushing one way but slightly. And so it might have just taken me. So I thought I'll swim back this way for 10 minutes. If I don't see anything, then I'm gonna swim back 20 minutes. I didn't have a watch on, so I didn't know how long time was. But I remember swimming for about 10 minutes and I didn't recognize anything. And so I decided to start swimming back the other way. And I'm swimming and I'm getting tired. And I'm thinking, I'm going to have to climb up on the beach and rest here. But I got to be back at the hotel by 5 to start getting ready for all this stuff, you know, or to at least eat. I haven't even eaten, you know. And so as I'm swimming back, I'm getting a little nervous. You know, I'm in, 1,500 miles from any other land mass. You know, I'm thinking I get lost. Once I get on the beach, when am I going to walk right or left?
Yeah.
And there's cliffs, and I don't know what the heck's going on.
Yeah.
So eventually, I see the final hotel in a grouping, and I realize I'm going the right way.
Okay.
So I swim over to this hotel, and I think I'm just tired. I'm going to swim up to the beach and then just walk the beach now.
Sure.
Because I've been
Yeah,
out there
walking's easier than swimming.
I've been out there for 4 hours, man.
Yeah.
And so I'm swimming, and I see in front of me some string, you know. And I think, here I am in this giant ocean.
Yeah.
And the string from somebody's stinking swimsuit.
Yeah.
How in the world?
Or I find the only litter in this whole deal. Yeah.
Beautiful, clear water.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, and I look, and then I realize I follow the string up, and there's a jellyfish of some sort on the end of it. And I'm like, whoa.
A big old bubble.
A big old bubble. And I'm thinking, I'm going to avoid that, you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of swim around, and I look, and there's another one, and then another one. I'm like, holy crap, this is the gauntlet.
Yeah.
And I remember just swimming in and out, like up and, and there's all dimensions. And you got your feet behind you if you kick too hard and it catches your leg. And I'm kind of, I finally weave my way back to the beach, and I come dragging myself up on the beach, and there's a guy like, what are you doing?
You're even more exhausted than you would have been.
He says, what are you doing? He says, don't you see the sign? And it says, don't swim in this month or something because it's
jellyfish
man
season.
of war.
Man of war, which is the nastiest of them.
Yeah. And he says, dude, if you'd got stung while you were out there, you would have drowned. I'm like, whoa. Well, I guess it's not my time.
Yeah.
But
and you told him, you're like, I got in way over there and I got here by accident.
Yeah, I told him what happened.
Yeah.
And he said, you picked the wrong beach, man. You should have kept swimming one way or the other. And I'm like, I was so tired, I didn't really know if I was going to, I never panicked.
Yeah.
But I was getting nervous.
Sure.
You know how that feels. When you start getting nervous about
I've gotten lost before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not panicked, but you're nervous.
Yeah.
And your panic is the next thing, right?
Yeah.
But I never did that. But yeah, but I had some really cool experiences there too in Hawaii. But nothing, I mean, you're right about vacationing. Nothing compares to vacationing with Shelly and you guys.
Yeah, it's going,
The time we all went to Galveston with the Quapils was fantastic.
Oh, yeah, that was a great one as a kid. I remember
and then
that,
Vegas a couple years ago when we all went.
Yeah.
That was so great.
Yeah.
And
but there is like a marked difference between, I agree. I would take a trip with my wife over anybody or anything any day alone.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But there's kind of a difference, it almost kind of marks different stages in your life.
Because
what I mean?
when you're doing it on your own or when you're not with a spouse, you're making your own schedule and you're just doing whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not a risk taker, but also
I find myself a little bit more adventurous when I was on my own.
There you
too.
go. And I was just about to say that I'm not a risk taker, but I like the idea of creating some sort of stories.
Yeah.
So I'm not adverse to putting myself in situations where something might go a little wrong because it will be cool to tell the story.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been the way I've done it. So, but yeah, how about you? Tell me about your.
This is going to be a common theme. I feel like my stories are so much less organic than yours is. You got a job as a 20-year-old and you went. Mine always, like I said, they seem less organic for some reason. But I mean, I guess that's just what it is. Yeah. So I did an internship my junior year of college, and I went and lived in Germany for 3 months. Right. I got an internship with the humanitarian department of this organization, and basically I was just doing clerical work for them. You know what I mean? And so I lived in Frankfurt, Germany for 3 months, and in that time, we were talking about getting lost. Right up the hill from my apartment. So the office was in Frankfurt. I lived in a little town called Friedrichsdorf, which is like an hour train ride out.
Okay.
So I'd train in and out. And there was one day right up the hill from my apartment was this like really big forest with all these cool paths and
Like
everything.
the Black Forest?
And it wasn't the Black Forest, but it was a forest,
Gotcha,
right?
gotcha.
And so yeah, I mean, I put on my sneakers, and one Saturday I just walked in and thinking I'll just backtrack my way, and at a certain point I was like, I don't know the way back.
Whoa.
You know?
Yeah.
And I was in this forest, but when you don't got nowhere to be, you're not on any time schedule, you don't feel panicked or anything like
Right,
that,
right,
right?
right.
So eventually I just walked down, because
Gotcha.
it was up in all these hills and stuff. So I walked down, and then once I got to the bottom of the hill, I was like, what city am I in? And I had ended up in a city like 2 cities over, basically.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And 2 cities over isn't as impressive.
towns, maybe.
2 towns, right?
Okay,
They're all pretty
yeah.
close together.
Right.
So then I just hopped on the train and went back to my
Oh,
apartment.
I got you. I got you.
But I think while I was in Germany, I got to know the city of Frankfurt pretty well. But while I was over there for that 3-month span, there was 1 week where, as part of the internship, we went to Paris, right? So me and the department that I was working for, we had like a conference type deal in Paris. We got a hotel in Versailles, just right down the street from the palace, right?
Right.
Where all the kings lived and everything.
Sure.
That's one of your favorite.
I remember this,
If you can
yeah.
ask it in a second.
Okay.
But same thing, it was me and a bunch of oldies that didn't want to do anything, right?
Right.
And they're like, well, we have the conference later this evening. We have our meetings later this evening. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, but we're here all day. Like, I'm going in, I'm in Versailles, which is a train ride away from like actual Paris.
Gotcha.
So it's like, I'm going to take a bus or a train into the city and go exploring, know?
Right.
And same thing happened. I got super lost in Paris, right?
Wow.
I got super duper lost, right? Because I had looked up a couple of things beforehand. I was like, I'm going to go hit that mall. I'm going to go hit, the Arc. I'm going to go hit the Eiffel Tower, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I just had like an actual paper map,
Okay.
which I know everybody used to use those,
Right,
but
right.
I'm not really from that.
Right,
I'm from
Sure.
I'm from punch it into
Yeah.
your GPS.
Sure.
But I didn't think that far enough ahead. I didn't have any data or reception because I didn't have like a European
You're in
phone,
Germany.
right?
Yeah.
So
in Europe.
I got super lost, and I remember going into this. I'm like, if I can find the Eiffel Tower, then I can find the nearest bus station, because I got to start getting back. Same kind of thing.
Right.
If I can find, it was at that point I was like, if I can find the Eiffel Tower, I can find the next bus stop, and I can hit back to where I need to be.
Right.
And I remember walking into this little, it would be like a bodega, I guess, like a little. I mean, there aren't bodegas around here. A bodega in New York, just a little like inlet that's like a little gas station without the gas, right?
Right.
And I walk in, and I'm like, this French guy behind the counter, I'm like, hey, can you tell me where the Eiffel Tower is? And I know he's not going to, understand me right off the bat because I'm speaking English. I'm like, hey, so I kind of go in apologetic. I'm like, hey, I'm sorry. Can you just like give me a point in the direction of the Eiffel Tower, and I'll just walk straight till I get there,
Right.
kind of thing. And he goes, I'm like, can you tell me where the Eiffel Tower is? And he's like,
As you imagine all French people do.
Yeah, which is exactly what he did, dude. His
Was he smoking a cigarette?
and he had a patchy beard, right?
So this is what you would
Yeah.
we would all picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever
Patchy
you're
beard, smoking a
picturing,
cigarette.
don't change a thing, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. He took a big old bite of a bag. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, sipping wine. No, not that far.
Yeah.
But he's like,
Has some gelato. No,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
it. I'm sorry. That's
Italian. Yeah. But he goes, and I'm like, the Eiffel Tower, right?
I feel tell.
And he's like, Eiffel Tower, And I'm like, so I pull up my map and I point to, and my map was one that I got at the hotel, so it was like a dadgum cartoon clip art,
Yeah.
So I point to the
It
big
has a
old
picture of
it's
the
got a
Eiffel
big
Tower.
old cartoon, of the Eiffel Tower, and I
Yeah.
point to it, and he goes, the Tour Eiffel. And I'm like, you know what I was saying, you
Yeah,
turd.
yeah.
You know exactly what I was saying,
Right.
man. And he's like, and he pointed. I was like, cool, that's all. If
Right.
I can get over there, and sure enough, 45 minutes later, I'm walking up on it, and I found my way back and stuff like that. So that was pretty fun. And then the only other deal I did outside of Frankfurt was I took a train into Berlin one weekend.
Right.
I asked for like the weekend off. I was like, hey, can I take Friday off? I'm going to go to Berlin,
Right.
And it's kind of like the Greyhound deal over there. You can pay $50 and it'll get you in a train
Anywhere.
to the other side of the country, right? It's not about shoot. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But a Greyhound in Texas will get you to the other side of Texas, right? In 6 hours.
Right.
In Germany, it'll get you to the other side of the country in 6 hours,
I
right?
gotcha.
And so, yeah, $50. I hopped on the train, and later, I think the train left at 4 a.m.
Right.
And so I'm in Berlin at 8 a.m., 9 a.m.
That's cool.
Right?
Right.
But that time I was a little bit more prepared, and I had planned out on the GPS everywhere that I wanted to be.
Gotcha.
And I had bought, a SIM card from there at that time. And so I just programmed in all of the places that I wanted to go.
Right.
And then I just walked Berlin for 8-9 hours, right? Just going to all the places I want. You're going to see the Berlin Wall, going to see I'm spacing the name on it, but yeah, going to see all the cool places there and any shopping malls or anything like that that I wanted, you know? And then I paid $15 for a hostel right next to which is one of those things that you're glad I didn't tell mom at the time.
I'm glad you didn't tell your mom.
I bought like a $15 hostel, a block away from the train station. So the next morning I could just walk over and get on my train.
Right.
Um,
Do you just buy a bed?
yeah,
Not even a room, just a bed.
a bed. Yeah. You buy a bed in basically like a studio that's got 8 or 9 or 10 beds in it.
Right.
And so I got there, and it was the coolest thing ever,
Of course, when you're that age.
yeah. Because I got there and I was like, I'm not tired yet, but there's nothing left for me to see. I saw everything I wanted to, and it was dark,
Right.
So I took the elevator up to the top, and they had like this cool, like top floor bar and restaurant.
Right.
So I just bought like a Coke and a pizza, a personal pizza,
Sure.
and I watched soccer highlights for like 2 hours, and then I went back down to my room and got in my bed, and throughout the night I heard people coming in and out and getting into their beds and changing and using the shower and everything like that.
Right.
And then at 8 or 9 a.m. I got up and hopped on my train back to my apartment.
That's awesome.
It was sick.
Now the one thing that you didn't share was the thing that you did with me while you were in. I think it was it the Palace of Versailles?
Yeah.
Was that it?
Yeah. So as
So
part
I'm
of
at work one day.
as part of that conference, right? Because
Yeah.
our hotel was down the road from Versailles,
Right.
which is maybe 20 minutes outside of Paris, right?
Okay.
And so as part of that conference, we all went and did a tour together. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I mean, you can tell.
Yeah. So I'm sitting at work one day. I can't remember where I'm at, but I get this text and it says, "Guess where I'm at," and it's from you. And I'm like, I knew you were in Europe, but I didn't know where. I said, I don't know where. And you said, I'm in the bedroom of King somebody of
like
something.
Louis the 14th
Louis
or
the
whatever.
14th in the Palace of Versailles. I'm in his bedroom. And I said something like, "Oh, that's pretty awesome." And you said, "And the smell in here is so overpowering that I just farted and nobody knew it." I cut a nasty fart. I cut a nasty fart in the bedroom of the King Louis of the Palace of
14th.
Versailles. Yeah. And nobody even knew.
Because it all smelled like, old papers and mothballs and stuff like that, right? Dust.
And dude, when I read that, man, I called your mom immediately. And I said, listen to this. And I even I remember taking a picture of that.
A screenshot of it.
Screenshot of that conversation.
Yeah.
Because it cracked me up because it was just straight up your personality.
It's also the most American thing that
Yes.
the most American thing I could have done in one of the most hallowed grounds in all of France.
Yeah, that's yeah.
I ripped a
You
fart
ripped one.
in Louis the
Yeah,
14th's bedroom.
Yeah, I guess it'd be like a Frenchman throwing up in the White House or something,
I don't even know if I think we would all find that funny.
A certain number of us would, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what would be the equivalent.
What's the equivalent? Well, at the time there was no equivalent. This was It was to me it was absolute genius. I'm like, you know what? I raised him right.
It would be like a French guy, sending back his nachos at the Super Bowl. I'm trying. Because the White House is American, but the Super Bowl is more American than that.
The Super Bowl is more American, yeah.
And there ain't nothing more French than the Palace of Versailles.
Well, we don't have anything that old or that I mean, it's
Yeah.
still around.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have ruins here in the United. I guess in South America there's some, but not
Yeah.
here on. Yeah, but yeah, it cracked me up so bad. I was just I laughed for the rest of the day. I was just giggling about it. And then when I got home, you know, your mom, she rolls her eyes, but she knew it was greatness.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But she rolled her eyes. But
Yeah. And I was, like I said, junior year in college, so I was 22, 23, right?
yeah, that's when you have those adventures, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just do those things that you
Yeah.
can do. You know, I remember, and this was after, by the way, me and Gary had gone to, or was it before? I think it was before. So I took a trip when I was 14 one time. Or no, this was long. I was after. It was between my junior and senior year. The summer between my junior and senior year, the soccer coach at my high school saw me playing baseball and said, I want you to play goalkeeper for the high school soccer team.
Yeah. Because you played shortstop, and it was
I
that
played
quick.
shortstop, and there was a lot of the same movements. And so he saw me, and I said, I don't know much about it. He said, well, come and do swimming lessons at my pool this summer. He had a pool, and he would teach swimming lessons to kids. And I'll pay you, and you can use that to buy
Goalkeeper gloves or something?
a goalkeeper camp in Chicago. They're having this big goalkeeper camp in Chicago. Right?
Wow.
Yeah. So he says, you can go out there, and they'll
Wait,
teach
wait.
you.
Did he want you to come teach swim lessons?
Yeah, I taught swim
Oh,
lessons
okay,
at
okay,
his
okay.
house.
Okay.
And he was going to pay me so that I could make enough money to go to goalkeeper camp in Chicago, that summer. Right?
Yeah.
So early in the summer, I'm making all this money. So I go to my mom, and I say, "Hey, Mom, you know what? I'm mixing up two stories. The first, I'm mixing up two stories. Well, I'll just finish this one
Okay.
because, anyway, I'll just go back to this.
I think I've heard this story. So
Yeah.
let me help direct you.
Right.
What I remember you telling me was, you knew if you asked her, she gonna say no.
Yeah, I asked her, could I go to this camp
Yeah.
in Chicago, and
She said, if you can pay.
if you can pay for it, you can go.
Okay.
She thought I couldn't pay for
And
it.
you didn't tell her it was in Chicago.
I didn't tell her it was Chicago. I didn't tell her I was working that summer for this guy. His name was Larry Irk. Was the guy's name?
Larry
the coach.
Irk.
Yeah, I'd love to catch up with him, but and so she thought it was just a passing, idea. Until one Sunday night, I said, "Hey, Mom, I need you to take me to the Greyhound bus stop tomorrow morning because I'm catching a bus to go to Chicago." It was Aurora, Illinois, is where it was, so a suburb of Chicago. And she says, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Yeah, I bought my ticket to the camp, and I have my Greyhound ticket." And she couldn't say no at that point. And I knew
Yeah.
she couldn't say no because I bought my ticket to the camp, which was expensive. I want to say a couple of $400 or $500. It was expensive.
Yeah.
And I had my Greyhound ticket ready to go.
Yeah.
And her face went kind of, I'm like, is she going to back out? But she couldn't, and she knew she couldn't. And I remember her driving me over to
The Greyhound
bus station downtown, and she was totally silent. She didn't say a word.
Because she was scared, huh?
She was scared, and she didn't
Which
know.
which is not an emotion that Grandma
No.
Sherry
Right.
shares very often.
Right, and she didn't know I'd been going to Galveston. By the way, she never knew about that.
Yeah.
But this is Chicago. This is
Oh yeah, this
across
is
the country.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
if there's any place more dangerous than the place you grew up in, it's Chicago.
Yeah. So here's the funny part: is they were supposed to pick me up in Chicago.
There's lots of places more dangerous than where you grew up, but I'm
Yes,
saying Chicago
yes,
is one of them.
definitely.
Yeah.
And so they were going to pick me up in the Chicago bus station.
The camp was going to pick you up.
Yes, from the Chicago. Most of the kids, they were picking them up at the airport.
Okay.
But I was not one of those kids, right?
Yeah.
And so they knew to pick me up at the Chicago bus station at like 6 o'clock in the evening, right? And I was leaving the day before. It was a 2-day trip, right?
Yeah.
And so we start.
If Dallas to Galveston is 6 hours,
Yeah.
Dallas to Chicago is
We leave Dallas and we're headed towards Memphis or something in that area. And we get to our first stop, and we got a kind of 20 minutes. And I look and I realize they're sending me the long way, right? Like
So-
they're sending me up and around instead of going straight from Memphis this way, where I could cut like 3 hours off my trip,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, crap, I can get there 3 hours earlier. I can get there at like 3 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
So So I take
Because what's on your mind is less time cramped in the bus.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'll cruise around Chicago, man. Remember, I'm
Yeah.
worldly at this point.
Yeah.
And
You've been
so,
to Galveston 3 summers in a
I've
row.
been a bunch of
You can
summers.
handle
Yeah,
anything.
I know what I'm doing. You know,
we took down those ex-cons when they
yeah, we
stepped to
did.
us.
They better not. And so I'm thinking, this is great, right? So I take the alternate route, not the route I was scheduled to go on, but they don't care. If you got a ticket to Chicago, they don't care how you get there. You can go through
Yeah.
LA if you want to. They're like, oh, Chicago, get on.
Yeah.
Well, we get there eventually.
Yeah.
So I get there, and we stop in the South Chicago bus station, and I thought that was where I was supposed to get off. So I get off in South Chicago, which is basically, we're talking the worst part of Chicago. They got, back when I was there was the project's called the Cabrini Green in the shadow of the bus station.
Yeah.
And it was the worst of the worst. I'm talking, and I get off and I'm like, even I'm scared.
You're like, I ain't gonna be cruising around much.
I'm staying right here.
Yeah.
And then after a while, I start thinking, I got to wait here 3 hours.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna make it. So I go over to one of the office places and I say, hey, can I just come in the office and hang out with you? I'll be quiet. And they're like, why are you here? I'm like, I'm supposed to go to the Chicago bus station. They're picking me up at 6. And like, oh, you're supposed to be downtown. You got off a little early. So hop on the next bus from here downtown. Downtown's a lot safer.
Oh,
right?
okay.
So I ended up going downtown. I was still
You
there.
just saw Chicago and you're like, here I am.
Yeah, Chicago.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was South Chicago. So I go to and sure enough, I could see the projects, and I knew this is a place where I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
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 And I ended up going downtown, and I'm still there 2 hours early. And so I remember paying for one of these lockers where you can shove all your stuff in there, and just walking the Chicago has this, I think, like 5 Mile road or something that goes right along the beach line there, and seeing every crazy there ever was in Chicago. But anyway, ended up getting picked up and ended up making the trip back. And after I got home, my mom finally told me. She said I was just scared to death, and I didn't. And back then when I got there, I couldn't just call her.
Yeah.
It's not like you can just pick up a phone and call somebody on the other side of the country. It's long distance. It's
Yeah.
expensive. All kinds of stuff are going on. So she
was
no idea.
basically like, I'll see you when you get home, I hope.
That's what happened. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And I
gnarly.
ended up calling her with a quarter from the payphone at the bus station when I got back. And then that's when she told me, she said, I've been praying the whole time you were gone. I'm scared to death.
Yeah.
She said, I've had tears in my, and that's not
Yeah.
like my mom.
She was probably treating all the kids better that weekend too.
You know what?
They probably got an easy weekend.
I don't know. She probably didn't pay him any attention. They probably just did whatever they wanted. She was so frightened. But that was a trip I'll never forget too, because I remember when I got home, I learned of that from her. And it also made me realize with you boys, I realized pretty quickly you were going to do some crap. And I needed to let you kind of do it, because first of all, you create memories, right?
Sure.
And second of all, it gives you confidence. It lets you. It's really helpful for you to be able to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And kind of spread your wings a little bit.
Yeah.
And you might get hurt now and then, but it's part of life.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't die or get maimed, then experiencing a little bit of danger isn't bad for you.
I remember one time you and Zach came walking up dirty and muddy when we were living
we
over.
had gotten in a fight.
Boy, you guys came home just looking roughed up, and Shelly was pretty shook.
Yeah.
And I pulled you aside and said what happened, and you guys had gotten into a pretty good tussle.
Yeah, there was a kid that was bothering everybody, and I sucker punched him.
By the way,
I snuck up on him, and he thought I was on his side because I was one of the older, bigger kids.
Yeah.
And I snuck up on him, and I
sucker punched him.
him.
If you're gonna get in a fight, throw the first punch. I don't know.
In hindsight, it's not very gallant of It's not really.
Well, I think we've all done things that weren't very gallant. So I think we're all pretty safe.
By the way, he shaped up after that. He didn't bother anybody.
You guys got along.
We got along, and he treated the smaller kids that he typically was bullying way better after
there you go. So the impact was felt.
Yeah.
So it was gallant.
I guess so. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Cool. Well, we ran a little bit long, but those are some good stories. So
sounds good.
We'll wrap it up, and we'll have to talk about trips with
spouses
later, because those are fun too.
Yeah, I know you got some too.
Yeah, we've gone on some fun trips together. So we'll do
Sounds
that
good.
in a later episode.
All right. See you, everybody.